There are plenty of oddly named places around the world, such as Christmas Island, Hell, Disappointment Island, and Egg and Bacon Bay. Another is South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, a British overseas territory found in the middle of absolute nowhere. But how exactly did this place get such an odd name, what goes on there, and if you wanted to visit, how on earth would you get there? Let's find out. So deep in the southern Atlantic is where we find South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, a bit of a mouthful of a name. The territory is broken up into two parts. In the north is South Georgia, which is made up out of one main island and many smaller islets surrounding it. And then to the southeast are the Sandwich Islands, which are an archipelago comprising of 11 volcanic islands in a kind of arc shape, stretching some 400 kilometers. The islands, as just mentioned, are extremely remote. The closest inhabited landmass would be the Falkland Islands, some 1,300 kilometers away. Travel some 4,800 kilometers northeast and you'll hit Cape Town, South Africa. But before we go any further, let's discuss the elephant in the room. Why on earth is it named the Sandwich Islands? So the very well-travelled British explorer James Cook discovered the South Georgia Island in 1775. He named it after the current king, King George III. He added the word South to distinguish it from the US state of Georgia. He then named the Sandwich Islands after John Montagu, who was in charge of the British Royal Navy at the time. But this still doesn't answer our question, why is it called Sandwich? Well, very interestingly, John Montagu is believed to be the inventor of the sandwich. The story goes that he was an avid gambler. One day he was playing cards and didn't want to leave the table. So he asked his servant to put his roast beef in between two slices of bread so that he could eat it with one hand, unintentionally inventing one of the most commonly eaten meals on Earth. James Cook then went on to visit Hawaii some 3 years later, and he named the islands the Sandwich Islands. This then gradually over time reverted back to its original name as we know it today. But enough about sandwiches, let's take a look at the demographics of the region, to which there are none, as the islands are uninhabited. The only people who ever set foot on the islands are scientists, researchers, and some extreme tourists. Getting there is, as you'd imagine, pretty tough. The only way to reach the island is by boat, either on some sort of official special research vessel or an extremely expensive cruise. I spotted this one online, which includes a visit to the islands but costs a crazy £11,700. But how long does it take to get there, and how rough can the journey be? Well, from the Falkland Islands it's 2 to 3 days travel, and from Ushuaia in South America up to 4 days. The seas here are prone to unpredictable and harsh conditions, meaning it's only possible during certain times of the year. If you are lucky enough to make it to the islands, this is how they look. You'd bear witness to one of the largest penguin colonies on Earth. At times, their size is believed to be upwards of 1 million. You may also see some elephant seals, which are honestly one of the most bizarre animals on Earth. They can grow to lengths of a crazy 6 meters long and weigh up to 4,500 kilograms. That's about the same as a fully loaded Tesla Cybertruck. So have the Brits always owned these islands? Well, kind of. Although James Cook discovered them, they weren't immediately claimed. Over time, the islands became a base for whalers and sealers. It wasn't for another 133 years that the islands would be formally annexed by Great Britain. But then the islands came under controversy when Argentina made a territorial claim in 1927. This dispute led to an actual battle when Argentinian troops landed on South Georgia to take them from the Brits during the Falklands War. After the Brits won this unofficial war, they reclaimed the islands. So the territory covers an area of around 3,900 kilometers squared, which would rank it as the 167th largest country if it were its own independent nation. That's just a little smaller than Cape Verde. So South Georgia Island dominates most of that size, at roughly 3,750 kilometers squared. The two parts of the territory are very different. South Georgia Island is of course much larger, it has more of a temperate climate and is more accessible. Whereas these Sandwich Islands are of volcanic nature and are extremely inhospitable with a very rugged terrain. One of the most interesting islands is Saunders Island, which is home to Mount Michael, an active volcano with a recently discovered persistent lava lake, which is actually extremely rare. This lava lake is one of just 8 known around the world. The territory's tallest point is Mount Paget, standing some 2,900 meters tall. This makes it the 4th tallest point across all of the UK's territory. However, if we exclude British claimed Antarctica, then it would actually rank as the tallest. Now, the climate of the islands may actually surprise you, as they're relatively mild considering how remote they are. Temperatures across the territory range from -6 to 10 degrees Celsius throughout the year. However, the region is prone to extreme and constant winds, making that -6 Celsius feel a lot colder. The highest temperature ever recorded in the region was a very pleasant 26.4 degrees Celsius. Now, the territory doesn't really have a capital city, so to speak, but as it's home to a permanent research station, King Edward Point is the de facto capital. The settlement is absolutely tiny and made up out of only a few buildings, mainly a research station, lab and accommodation. Just next to King Edward Point is Grytviken, the territory's largest settlement. The settlement once was a whaling station, but today it is uninhabited, but sometimes visited by tourists. It is home to a museum and St Andrew's Church, which was built in 1913 and is in fact the southernmost church on Earth. Although rarely anyone ever goes there, it is still a fully functioning church, with the most recent ceremony taking place in 2007. This ceremony was to commemorate a Norwegian whaler who was buried on the island. Oh, and yeah, that means there's actually a cemetery here. The currency of the territory is of course the British pound. However, I can't really imagine anyone is buying or selling anything whilst on these islands. The flag, as you'd expect from a UK territory, looks like this. You've got the dark blue background with the Union Jack in the top left corner, but then you've got this interesting coat of arms here, comprising of a seal, penguin and reindeer, with the words "Let the lion protect his own land" in Latin underneath. The territory uses the UTC-2 time zone, which honestly has to be one of the least used time zones on Earth. Just look where it runs through. It's hard to gauge an exact amount, but there's probably roughly 10,000 people in the world who use this time zone. It runs through some small Brazilian islands as well as Saint Pierre and Miquelon, who only actually use this during the summer months. So in the winter months, there's probably only 2,000 or 3,000 people actually using this time zone. So there we have it, South Georgia and the Sandwich Islands in a nutshell. Like and subscribe for more geography content, and as always, thank you very much for watching.